Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm here with one of my favorite guests, Mr. Grayham Forscutt, a galactic astrologer. He's back for the third time to give us a very interesting talk today. Welcome, Grayham. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. It's always fun to talk about my favorite things.
Yes, yes. So good to have you. And today you're going to share with us a lot of things. So would you like to let us know what you wanted to talk about today so the group knows?
Sure, sure. We did last time we did a video on what's coming up in November. This is to do with the election in the US. We
Mhm.
did it from an astrological point of view and how Pluto's the major player during well, from now really, right from now through to January, January 20th, the inauguration and so on. So there's so much in the astrological world that's taking place, and this includes lineups to a specific star called Altair. It's the head star of the Eagle constellation. Of course, the head of the Eagle is the main kind of symbol for the US there, especially their military and so on. So Pluto's lined up with this star during this next couple of months. It's big. So Pluto, of course, exposes, gets to the depths, the truth of the situation, and then more or less presents a reset button. So it'll be interesting to see what unfolds. We're going to do another video, a
Mhm.
bit later, once it's sort of more or less happened.
Yes. Wow. Lots coming up with that. So, because so November 5th is sort of when it starts, but you're saying we might not see the effects of it till January. So we'll do more videos on it. And then you're going to cover for us another topic, which is so exciting for me, music and color.
Yeah, we'll just talk a little bit about color and light, and then a bit more about music and scales and how musicians might approach what they call the music of the spheres. So that'll be the kind of the main bulk of what we're going to go through here.
Very
But we'll do the color first. It's a lot shorter.
Very cool. Wonderful. Should we start it? Do you want to do your presentation or should we talk? Do you want to talk about
We,
color a little bit first? We always have the coolest PowerPoints. So, yeah.
yeah, I think the PowerPoints are the way to go because then we're kind of looking directly. It's not everything in the PowerPoint, but there'll be things I'll point out, and then it'll be easier, I think, looking at those.
Yeah, I can see the colors you're talking about, and so
Yeah,
amazing how much color makes a difference in everything.
I'm clicking the share.
Mhm. Perfect. Let's see, is it coming up?
Mm, Now it's disappeared for some reason.
Let me try sharing it again, make sure it's good. There we go. Let's see, is it letting you?
Ah, there it is.
Good. I'm just gonna make,
I've got a few images here to look at.
there we go. Mhm.
Most of these come from an earlier presentation. So this first one, this is more to do with light itself. I'm not sure whether people are aware that light itself is kind of this how energy arrives and hits our eye. So when we look out at night, for example, and look at a star, that light that we see, that's what's arriving to our eye. Between our eye and the star, you could go over to the site and look at the person standing there looking up at this at the a specific star, and we won't see that light beam hitting that person's eye like we would expect to see. So the actual the way that light arrives or travels, especially long distances, is what they call a longitudinal wave, which is different than other wave forms. You can get spherical waves like transverse waves. You can get kind of like an up and down wave, like on a beach. But a longitudinal wave is the source, and then you think of something like a telescopic um, pool cue or a telescopic tent post, where each time you extend it, it sort of pops forward in front of you to make the tent pole longer.
Mhm.
So that's a longitudinal wave, the source, and then the wave goes forward, like instead of crossways or up and down and so forth, the actual wave itself is going forward. And that forward extension. It's what they call superluminal. And superluminal means faster than light. And as you go extending our kind of tent pole, each time the extension makes one further extending itself, then that is based on what they call the golden ratio. And that means that once it of light becomes superluminal, it very soon becomes almost instantaneous. So when we look out at night at a star, what we're seeing arriving to the surface of our eye, that's almost instantaneous. You know, science, 3D science will say, no, it takes so many thousand light years or 100 million light years, you know, for light to travel. Light to travel from the sun to the earth takes 8 minutes, but no, it's an instantaneous event. So this is how we can interact in real time with different stars or different groups that are inhabiting different star systems. So that's the first thing. It's famous people in the past, William Russell, Schulberger, more recently, Dan Winter. They have the physics that can explain this probably better than I'm doing here. So that's the first step, is that light itself is instantaneous. When it arrives to hit our eye, it's doing so. I'm going to point to, if you can see the little cursor here, up towards this. There's a torus shape here. See if we can get those down a bit there. Look, so there's a torus shape here. So that torus there.
Probably zoom on it too if you want. Yeah, there's like kind of like a donut shape, right? The torus shape. It's kind of like a little donut.
Yeah, I'll see if I can zoom in a bit. It's still getting a bit clumsy up there.
Yeah, I think right there where you were. That's it. That's
there it is. So that's the shape of a photon. So not only is the light, when it arrives to hit our eye is kind of like a torus as well. We'll get to an image of that in the next clip. So the light that we see that's hitting our eye, that torus there, hits our eye at different angles. And that's what gives the different colors. I'm going to go to the next, or just scroll down here a little bit. So the two main colors, the two primary colors, if you've ever heard of Goethe, this guy, this is back in the Renaissance era, did some experiments with color going through a prism like we can see here. And he was able to show that the main colors, the primary colors, are blue and yellow. It's a little bit different than the normal Western or the normal color scheme where we have a pyramid here. The difference is in 3D, the color spectrum through the prism has a black background when they do the experiments, whereas over here, he's got a white background. And you get a slightly different color spectrum. Green isn't the middle of the rainbow, for example. In this color spectrum, it's kind of this color, magenta amethyst.
Oh, interesting.
He goes on to show that the color or the light that's going through a prism here, the first two colors, blue and yellow. So down here, this comes from Wikipedia. I know this color doesn't look that good, but it's got here blue. It looks like kind of mauve, I guess, or lavender, but it's meant to be blue. So it's a bit of a sloppy diagram. So the blue color there, and there's the yellow color there. And these are the angles here that this color or this light is hitting that torus, and that torus is angled at these angles here, 116.5 degrees, 63.5 degrees. Over here, that's the exact angles here. There's 116 and 63.5 there. And that creates what they call a golden ratio diamond there. And that golden ratio diamond up here is what some of the kind of like the spiritual channels are talking about. This is the diamond light body because it's made of diamond, golden ratio, diamond surface paneling, if you like. So we see that color or light as you're going towards your light body through the two prime colors and you step into the superluminal, then those two light colors, or what steps through the superluminal, becoming faster than light, then that's the light body.
Wow.
So that's step one there. So any, if you want to add or say anything there?
Yeah, I think that I was surprised that it's like the angle that it hits our eyes that makes the color, right? Like it's
I've
the,
got more of that as
yeah.
we go.
Ah,
That's true. I'll show you how this works a slightly better way here. So this is by Dan Winter, and I'm not expecting anyone to understand the maths. It takes a lot of time. And he's
wow.
basically showing the same thing here. Here's blue and
Mhm,
yellow and so on and so on. He's showing the sort of wavelength of these colors.
mhm,
So down here, he makes this comment. So the origin of color is
mhm,
based on the dodecahedron. Now, that's true in the sense that a dodecahedron
mhm,
is how the photon and the torus shape, that donut shape, how that the dodecahedron itself is made of a bunch of photons and a bunch of torus or donut shapes. So he's just using a different word there. And
mhm.
he's saying there basically that as that, or the different angles of the torus arrives to our eye, it's arriving at the angles of the dodecahedron, which we were describing up here with this shape here, because this here shape it coexists with the dodecahedron. This one's called a different name. It's a tricontahedron, but a
Mhm,
dodecahedron interfaces with that perfectly. So,
mhm.
so just going on here to the next one.
Yes.
Just, whoops. So there's our torus shape with a hole in the middle.
Mhm,
You can kind of grab that torus on both
mhm.
sides and rotate it, turn it inside out, and you can see the inside coming out and around. You've got the spiraling colors of the spectrum there. That's just a tool that he uses and sells to
Wow.
show how light and the different colors work with the torus. So next one. So
Mhm,
this is just showing really. Here's our
mhm,
eye. So this is our eyeball here in a
mhm,
way. Same over here. So here's a dodecahedron. This is what it is. And
mhm.
here's the other parts of our eye here. So along comes a torus shape, and it's going to hit this surface, and the angle that it hits that surface there creates the different colors that we see, all different colors.
Wow. It's so cool. I had no idea that it's like the angle that it hits our eyes that's making the color. That's like a big insight for me today.
Not surprising. This is new research.
Mhm.
It's about maybe 12, 15 years old.
Okay.
So it hasn't been around that long.
Yes.
Moving to the next one. So that's basically how I just wanted to present there how the light from
Mhm.
the stars that travels is instantaneous or more or less. It might be a split second, but it's more or less our brain picks it up as instantaneous. So that's the main thing in the sense that if you want to interact with stars at night, Arcturus, which we've just passed a couple of days ago, if you want to interact with these locations, you can do so because knowing with pretty good evidence, especially if you check out the work of some of these people like Dan Winter, that this is a real-time universe that we're interacting with.
Wow.
Whereas 3D science will say, no, 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 you can't interact with a distance far away like that. It takes millions of years or hundreds of years for some of the closer stars for that light to travel from there to here. But no, we're living in more or less a real-time universe.
Wow. I love that. Sometimes I go out at night and I just talk to the stars and I grab them. I just kind of go squeeze them. Like, I wonder if I can teleport, somehow over there. But
Well, that's what happens, especially if you understand how the portals and the Stargates work, then sure, this is what people are doing, and you can more or less project a part of your consciousness to that star. And different groups have done it, and they kind of try and keep records of it. They write it all up. This is the Robert Monroe Institute that teach out of body travel. They have what they call the Star Lines Report, where groups of people get together and they focus on projecting their consciousness as a group to different stars towards the galactic center and so on, and write it up as a kind of a thesis in a way.
wow, I love that.
Mhm.
I love that. And as long as it's around the great central sun, that's always like been the most fascinating to me, you know. And I like that your astrology is based on the great central sun versus just our sun. So
Yeah,
good.
and thinking of it as a real-time universe, then you can, with that bit of a rational sort of understanding behind what you're doing, it gives you more confidence then to have a sort of an experience, but then validate that experience with new science. I call it just 5D science in a
Mm,
sense.
science. I love that. Yeah. Like you feel like, yeah, it's not just woo-woo. There's actually science that can prove all these things now. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the crown chakra speaking. In the crown chakra, where the fusion of polarities takes place within each of us, we have the experience psychic side, but we have the science side to back it up. And that crown chakra experience hasn't been on the planet until the last 30, 40 years or so. So it's been more or less impossible before that time to actually have that scientific validation. And this science is coming forward now. There's a bunch of people around the planet that are bringing it forward.
very cool. Love that. Gonna
Mm.
help a lot of people feel validated, I think.
Very much so, very much so. This is a different glyph. This is hopefully a little bit more fun orientated. So this was created, when you go to the website, it's a moving, you can slide this along a little bit here. I'm not sure where the slider is up here or something. So this slides along the color spectrum here, but it has this built-in gauge. So there's a kind of a light blue color there, or turquoise color, and then the white bit there. And the distance between those two uh, there, that mark there is the golden ratio. So say, for example, just simply, if that length there is, say, 8 inches, then we know that that distance there is going to be 5 inches and that distance there is 3 inches. That's the Fibonacci mathematics. So this is this here will extend, so that turquoise part will become longer and this part will become longer, but it'll still be the ratio. So you can pick colors. You can get a color there, color there, and a color there, and they'll be separated by the golden ratio. And this is the same person that's done this. It's called the Phi Matrix, if you want to Google search it.
Matrix color palette creator. Whoa, cool.
Yeah. So it's well known that golden ratio is the template of beauty. The people who are tuned into color, and I feel like I can do this, and I have done this for many years. Color's sort of an interest of mine. So what we see it in the movies, we see it on the theater stage. So the costume designer in the movies, a really good, colorful movie with good decor and everything and so on. Often the two main characters, so you got the guy, you got the woman, and they're, the potential love affairs kind of just about to arrive. And the costume person has got the man in sort of male colors, but they'll perfectly match, and often in the golden ratio. They don't know that. They're just doing it because they can tune into this. And the woman is wearing the complementary golden ratio color in the feminine color spectrum. So often, I see it often in good movies, especially if the set is done in that way where it's not just a dark, dingy kind of shoot them up kind of thing, but where it's more of an artistic movie and every color of every, all the decor and everything. So they notice, they use this color. So anybody working with color can sort of check what they're doing if they want to by using this color bar here. And this is now our entry into the golden ratio, because nearly everything I do is based around the golden ratio for numerous reasons. So I think that might be the end. Oh, sorry.
Oh,
So
so
here we go.
psychology, that looks cool. Yeah, very cool.
Yes, so this comes from about 80 years ago.
Wow.
In one respect, it's a little bit dated, the phraseology, but the theme, the underlying, um, what they're presenting is true. It will be true. It's forever true. So this is Alice Bailey. who was born and died lined up to the Galactic Centre in her astrology chart. So she was bringing in something. She spent about 35 years on the receiving end of a telepathic exchange from one of the Himalayan adepts, one of the masters, as they say. And she wrote a couple of books, Esoteric Psychology 1 and 2. And she went into great depth about how each of the, she called them rays rather than colors, how each of the rays was energies coming from different constellations, different stars, and those energies were impacting what was going on in our solar system. So, for example, we often call the age of Aquarius, the age of Pisces, and so on. So those ages of more or less 2,000 years, the reason that they are different from each other is that the psychology, the different ray type, the different color is influencing that 2,000-year period. So we have a whole era, more or less, of a certain approach to life and living. And along comes the age of Aquarius. And all of a sudden things change and a new ray or a new energy and new soul groups begin to incarnate onto the planet. So, for example, the ray that's arriving with the Aquarian age is this color. Now, these colors, you know how sometimes the internet's not giving the exact color that well. So they call it the amethyst ray. So the amethyst ray is the ray of Aquarius, the ray of the Aquarian age. And we only need to go to a good outdoor festival. I see you wear it yourself often and have it in your own life there. You only need to go to a good organic festival. The predominant color worn in the art decor and so on is amethyst, and magenta is a part of amethyst, the amethyst crystal and so on. And if we look at artwork to do with starseed and the stars and the backdrop, and also astrophotography and that, they just can't stop themselves from using this color. So the ray psychology of colors is a deep and complex storyline. So Pontea here and I, we have a lot of red ray in our soul makeup. We're part of the red ray soul group. So there's a whole psychology about what the red ray means and so on. So you could more or less check that out. Google search the psychology of color and you can read all about whatever color ray you think you might be. And we'll give some examples.
And you can find that out for people, like when you do their chart, you can figure out what color ray they're connected to more, or is that what you're saying? Based on their birthday?
Yes, I can do it, but generally I don't use the word color. I use the word, you know, you're tuned into Pleiades, you're tuned into Arcturus. You know, I don't define the color so much. I'm more talking about the, you know, the different traits.
Like the actual, what they bringing for that color, you're saying.
Yeah, the qualities. Right. Sometimes I do, but you know, not always, not often.
Right. Well, we're lucky to hear it, so this is great. Language in light of the modern era.
So I just thought this might be interesting. I've got a few clips here which have this as the title, just to show what I mean when we're looking at these colors. So this is simple alphanumerics. We've got A equals 1, and we have down the other end Z equals 26, just a number for each of the English letters. So in here I've got 108, 196, 160. All of these words here, if we add up each one there, then it'll equal 108. So for example, we talk about the golden ratio, and that's what they call the phi there, or phi, PHI is another name for the golden ratio. So we've got the phi spiral, which is going through that torus we were talking about earlier on. So fractal time. So this is what we'd expect when I was talking about the extension of the tent pole, and it's like a telescopic. So each time it extends in the golden ratio, and that's what fractal time is. Each of the planets in the solar system, for example, the length of time, the period around the sun, they call it orbital period, from Mercury to Venus to the Earth to Mars, they are based on the golden ratio. That has been proven. So there's a whole bunch of words here that align with and expand upon what the golden ratio, what the 5 spiral means. And you can sort of go down there and read them. The famous spiritual term, I am presence. We see it everywhere, but there's no science around it. But now we know what it is. We're nesting in, we're embedding in the infinite golden ratio spiral. That is called the oneness. That is called wholeness. Once we embed, we're here as a human, we embed our consciousness when we're meditating or when we're sitting on the beach or go to a PowerPoint, we embed in larger golden ratio spirals, the Earth, etc., then the solar system, the planets based on golden ratios. So we're kind of living out the I am presence.
Kind of
And
like
now we have,
that. If we're in our I am presence, we'll link into everything else that's connected to the golden ratio, you're saying, almost like a little puzzle that just goes click, 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 click.
yeah,
And
all of a sudden we're in real time interacting with the star, which
Mhm,
seemingly is a long way away. So
mhm.
we interact with the I am presence, which might have had experiences in Sirius, for example. And we nest into the oneness and we download what we need to download from the Akashic records.
Very cool. Very
So what we were going to look at was that's a little bit different topic. So this was
Mhm.
something I didn't really put together specifically for what we're doing here. But over here, we've got the violet ray. So here's the ray type. This is the psychology of color. So the violet ray equals 160 when A is 1 and Z is 26. So
Mhm.
other words, terms that equal the same vibration, psychic sciences, time traveler, the trains shaman,
Mhm.
temple secrets, the inner planes, the astral light, psychic research, astronauts, and
Astronauts.
here we have
Funny
the
word.
over, and we also have the oversoul here. So the oversoul is a bit more broad. I wouldn't say it's just restricted to the violet ray.
Mhm.
The etheric plane body, into the light body, etc., etc. So those people that are working as soul representatives of the violet ray, well, this is what they're doing. This is their main area of interest. Of course, they got other rays that would be called sub rays, but this is their ray type. This is their soul group, and they're working predominantly in this field.
Wow. There's a
If
lot
we
of
go to the
work they're doing over there. A lot of important stuff happening there. Looking at all
this
that.
is what, and this is totally different. This one. So
Mhm.
here we have A1Z26. If we
Mhm.
work out the orange ray, or not the, but orange ray, well, that equals 137. So those that are representing the orange ray, we have creative play, world music, choreographer, rhythm games, interweaving, interlocking, creation rites, healing rites, through creative play, a
Mhm.
tantric rite, second chakra, etc. So we begin to see
Mhm.
what qualities each soul group or each ray type is here to represent. For
Okay.
another example, A1Z26, 126. Each of these phrases equal 126. The green ray, emerald planet, a rainforest, landscape davas, atmospheric, earth energy, garden designs, agriculture, live food diet, organic food, surplus, forestry, homeopathy, the apiarist, landscaper. So we
Wow.
start to see how people are incarnating here as representatives of different ray types. Hence, we have the once we put them all together, we
Mhm.
have what they call the Christ aspect, where you bring and work all the colors together, like the round table of King Arthur and so on. Each of those members of the round table represent a different ray type.
Also, each of them were like almost like the seven archangels, we could say, kind of like
Exactly.
seven knights. And wow. Yeah, I think about King Arthur's and the Knights of the Round Table often recently. It keeps coming to my mind. Like we need to gather all the knights. I keep thinking, So
Right.
do some
And
project.
on those nights, in my view, I think we shared it once before, the image of the social construct, in the future, we do have that set out in that kind of way. You have your 12 departments, there's galactic, and then there's education and healing and urban design and so on. And that's what happens, is that each of us gravitates naturally to one of those, or maybe a couple of them, and we're seen by others in the new world we're living in and building. We're seen by others as the go-to person in those fields, and that itself builds the new community just by people being skilled at their particular ray type, and others just gravitate to that person because they know they're on the cutting edge of that type of activity.
I love that. I love that. So as each person does the things they're naturally good at and develops it, the new world is being created in the 12 categories, which, because you had said there's 7 rays, and I know there's 5 extra ones. I think you told me one time too, right? Like there's the 7 and then 5, so that would add up to the 12 different categories, kind of.
Yeah, nowadays they have the gold, the silver, which we looked at. Oh, yeah, I think we looked at. Or maybe it's coming up. The silver ray is coming up.
Yeah, let's see.
So there's gold, silver, amethyst is a new one, brown, and I think black was the other one. Although, different teachings have different ideas of what those colors are, but that they're sort of still embedded within the 7. It's a bit hard to explain, but
Okay, cool.
we have nowadays teachings out there that will talk about 15 dimensions, 13 dimensions. In the past, it was 7 dimensions. But really what happens is, or what it is that those 13 or 15 dimensions, they're just breaking up that 7 into more segments. I'll show you that when we start going through some of this music, which we're going to start on here.
Awesome.
So that's the end of the color, unless you want to add something there.
Yeah, I think would you say that the colors people wear would impact their day-to-day lives and the colors they have in their environment?
Absolutely. In
Yeah.
the sense that I won't have any muddy colors in my environment. Not if I can, like generally if I buy, like I've got a Roland piano and I've got DJing gear and that, well, I'll pay a little bit extra and get a white one, whereas nearly all of the other, predominantly they're black.
And
Well,
black
I
is
don't
usually
want,
not lucky, right? Like for most people, when you wear black, it's not necessarily a higher vibration. Now, if you wear black with colors on it, I heard it's okay. But if it's all black, then yeah, how would light even hit the color black, I guess? Or does black just absorb color kind of thing?
well, that's also something that they're still debating out there. To me, black is actually a color. Um, I don't see anything wrong. To me, black's the archetypal feminine color. White's the archetypal masculine color. But like black and white, they both have traits which are not positive. For example, the white, don't touch me. I'm white. I'm so pure.
So
So
dirty or something like that. Yeah.
don't dirty me. So the white, the male ego, can sort of latch onto a negative aspect of white. And the same with black. Black can be depressing. So some people can actually hold them down. They feel like their crown chakra has been capped. Wearing a black hat all the time might not be good for your crown chakra, especially if you're meditating. Right?
Oh wow, okay. So different colors will open up different things in our field, basically. And it's good for people to study that.
Yeah. It's the like on the tree of life. This is the Kabbalah and the tree of life. Each of the circles, the spheres of consciousness, the different dimensions on that tree of life, they have different colors, and not just red or blue, but for example, we'll have a look at red. So in red, you have crimson. So crimson is a color. It represents like an authority figure, like someone who's a leader, a good leader. But we also have scarlet, another octave or harmonic of the red ray. And scarlet is the scout who boldly heads off into the unknown future. We also have raspberry. So the color raspberry is like the occultist who dives deep into a topic. And then we have pink in all the different shades of pink, warmth, generosity, welcoming, things like that. So each color has its harmonics, like emerald, the top of the green ray, gold, the top of the yellow ray, etc., etc.
Yes, very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. 'Cause I know a lot of people are starting to understand color's importance. And so it's good that we hear these a lot.
And also people often wear the color that they are of the ray that they are representing. Not always, but often, especially when a person becomes more tuned in, they often wear the colors that they represent. I often wear colors which have a sort of a indigo, orgeat blue, kind of, because my main topic of interest, especially lately, has been stellar and looking out into the night sky. Whereas I have friends that work at the community gardens, and they're nearly always wearing green of some shade or other. And you often see street theatre performers, they're wearing that orange we were talking about before, in the fire colours of the arts, especially the kind of.
Monks always wear orange too, kind of like to represent burning karma or something like that, I think. Or I don't know what
Can
they
be that as well. Exactly. Yeah.
alchemize. Very cool.
So we're stepping into music.
Yay, music. My favorite
So
music and favorite tool of survival.
I mean, it's probably my first. So we're just going to start off with this one. Now, this book's 90 years old now. So this is a book written by Cyril Scott. He was an English composer. They called him the father of modern classical music in England there. But he was also a theosophist, and supposedly he was channeling this book, and again he was tuned into the adepts up in the Himalayas there, the masters and so on, and they were sharing with him, and he wrote about it in his book, that many of the classical composers over the last 500 years or so, 600 years or so, they were, with what they were doing, the compositions that they were creating, they were trying to change and update the collective consciousness in the Western world. And he's got a number of them laid out here. There's Bach and Handel and Beethoven, that, and so back in that era, there was no such thing as psychoanalysis. And so that each of these composers in the era that they were composing their music was trying to bring to, in a subtle way, just through the music, making people more aware of different aspects of subtlety. So intimacy, joy there for Mendelssohn. Chopin, this is like, his music was kind of more feminine in a way, the refinement of the soul. There's some of the other composers. We'll go down to Debussy. So Debussy's music was called Impressionism, trying to help people tune in to the subtle energies of nature and the weather spirits and so on. So, of course, this now is almost 100 years old. So he's not talking about any of the modern music, and there's so much good modern music out there in so many different fields of music. So he did say, this was the one that I became more and more interested in. He talked about Alexander Scriabin, who was a Russian guy. This is also back there. I think he died in about 1915. And there's an asteroid named after Scriabin. I have it prominent in my own chart. So Cyril Scott there said that Scriabin's music was the first audible music compositions based around what he called the music of the spheres, the higher devas, not nature devas, but the planets and so on. So I studied Scriabin's music for a number of years, probably a couple of decades, and what I realized is that this is his last half a dozen or maybe dozen or so compositions. He was using the normal piano, and he was creating his scales to create, or he was creating chords to create scales in music that weren't part of the normal scales of that era, not part of the Pythagorean modes. So the scales of music that he created was based on the golden ratio. So in a sense, that's where we're going to leap into here, is we're really talking about music, sound a little bit, and how sound or scales can be utilized to create deeper impact. The music of the spheres, tuning into the higher devas. So from here on, we've got quite a few images, and some of them might repeat a little bit. We'll see how we go.
Pretty.
Now,
it's cool.
Jump in and comment if you feel to
I
at any
like that
point.
gold star. That's so says a polytope. That's so cool. Such a good energy coming off of it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is what they call a 4D
Mm.
dodecahedron. So you can get there's an app. I don't think you can download it, but you can go to on to this website, and you'll see this thing morphing to a number of different slightly variations of itself. It's called dogfeathers.com. You'd have to go to this guy's website, dogfeathers.com, and you'll go through his apps and you'll find his app. He'll talk about them. I think he calls them Hyperstar, and it's all free. It doesn't cost anything.
Very cool. Very cool.
So we're back to waveforms again. So here we have someone playing a violin. Now, I know there's the violin itself, which is going to interrupt the waveform a little bit, but the sound that's coming off the violin, or sound in general, now we do have our voice, which is aiming sound out in that direction, but a sound source, if it's just started from a center, creates a spherical wave. Over here, sound and it is like an expanding bubble. Here, so we see the sphere that's out, but in here, that's the center of the sound source, and each of these spherical here, this is like the harmonics in music. So when we're listening to sound, or when sound is generated, it's creating an omnidirectional wave, unless of course it's bumping into something or it's directed, you know, specifically as a channel. But sound itself, if not interrupted by something, will create a spherical wave. In 2D, this is what they call a somatic image here. This is like flat surface. Let's see if I can get it up a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
There we go. Cool.
So there it is. There's a flat surface, you know, the somatic, where in the past they used to rub a violin bow on a drum with sand on it, and as you rub the bow, the little particles of sand jump and form different geometry.
Wow.
Right? Sorry?
That's cymatica, or what's it called? That word for it? Cymatica.
Cymatics.
Cymatic.
CYMATICS. Cymatics.
Cymatic. Cool.
So this is a kind of a 3 images here. So there's the flat surface. This is our decagon that we use in our astrology. So again, based on the golden ratio. And so that's a flat surface looking down on top. And we see here there's a pentagon there, and then there's 2 pentagons to form the decagon. But even though it's flat surface, what's really happening, here's the same image again with the same 10 points around here. Now we're beginning to see that this and the shape here in the middle is actually like a dodecahedron, a polyhedra, like this thing up here. And over here we've got the full dodecahedron, which is the shape of our eye in the sense we were looking at before. So even though the flat surface sound wave on this plate here, actually in the real world, if we can actually see a 3D version of cymatics, we would see that sound forms a spherical or geometric polyhedral shape.
Very cool. Very cool. So it's like all music, like we're listening to, is making the same shape, would you say? Or is it different sounds make different shapes, obviously? Right?
Yes, different. If you tune it to 432 and rub your bow up the drum skin, then it will create one geometric shape. If you have 144 hertz and you rub you get a different geometric shape.
Okay, cool.
And then you have combinations of them. So here's a bunch of, there's lots going on in this geometric polyhedral form here.
Yes.
So there's a number of different shapes in this one polyhedron here. So that's when you have more than one tone sounding at the same time.
Very cool.
So I think we've got a couple more on sound, then we kind of go into the music. Oh, here we are, music. So this is just general music theory that you could learn in university or even high school music class. So here's the intervals. So this is an octave. I'll just see if I can get it down a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think right there that middle gets smaller or something like that.
Yeah, it keeps to drop that a bit. The Zoom thing is interrupting the ability to make.
Oh yeah, there we go, right there. Yeah, right.
So there we are. So looking on a keyboard, doesn't matter whether this is C or D or F or whatever. So between one C and the next C on the piano, an octave,
Mm-hmm.
or one D and the next D, or one F and the next F. So it's an octave on the piano. This is called the chromatic scale. And this is the white and the black keys. And there's 12 of them from here down to there. And this is the name for them. You've got the minor second. This is the first black key above the white one. So we go through, and here's the names for them, through the octave. And over on this side, we've got one here. So this could be 1 meter long, just as an example. So this is 1 meter long. Here at 2-1. So this is half a meter. An octave is half the length in string length, and the vibrations, it goes twice as fast. So say this, for example, is a meter long, and this is half a meter. If this is 200 and sorry, so we get 432 hertz, just because people sort of understand this 432 thing. So there's 432 hertz, half the string length. This one down here will be twice that, so be 864 hertz. But this is just general music theory, and I just want to bring your attention to these ratios here, because where do these ratios come from?
Yeah.
So, and this is going to have a look at in these next couple of images here.
Fibonacci.
Oh, okay, this is the golden ratio in mathematics. It's called the Fibonacci series, named after this guy in the Renaissance that was checking out nature and realized predominantly built around the golden ratio. That's for numerous reasons, which we're not going to get into just here now. So in the mathematics of the golden ratio, he starts off with 0, 1 equals 1, 1 and 1, 2, 1 and 2, 3, 2 and 3, 5, 3 and 5, 8, 5 and 8, 13. So the distance between each of these, 3, 5, 8, 13, that's a golden ratio. We talked about that when we were looking at that color with that turquoise and then the white, and how that can expand along that color bar, that phi matrix
the
bar.
ratio that it expands at, you're saying, is it's almost like it's adding them up. They get added up together.
Yeah, they get added together. Yeah. So the next one's going to be 21, 8 and 13, 21, and so on and so on. Eventually you get down here, it'll be 144, which is part of the number sequence of the Fibonacci numbers. We've got more of this, so it'll become clear as we go. But if we go back, we'll just keep an eye on these ones here for now. So we've got, there's 2, 3, and then there's 3, 5, and 5, 8. 3 and 5 equals 8, of course. 5 and 8 equals 13. So there's golden ratio distances here. If we go back and have a look at the normal common scale in music, we find here that we have 8, 5, and 5, 3. They call the major and minor sixths. There's also the 3, 2, which is a perfect fifth. A perfect fifth is, 2/3. Well, that's 66. It's 33.3%, 66.6, 99. So that's not quite the golden ratio. The golden ratio gets more exact the further out these numbers go here. But the major and minor sixths are the Fibonacci closest to golden ratio numbers in the scale that's on the common piano. So if we go from here from the octave, we put one finger there on say C, for example, and we go all the way down, and we put our second finger at the same time. We put it down here on G sharp. Well, that's a -6. We put it on the A when we've got our finger on the C. That's a major 6. So you've created a chord in music based around very close golden ratio numbers. And when we hear that, we're listening to, in a sense, the first aspect of the music of the spheres. We said earlier on that the distance between each of the planets in the solar system, based on the golden ratio numbers. So we're talking about how we can relate sound, specific sound. Here we go. Here are Scriabin's Higher David's Music of the Spheres. And this is what he was doing. I studied his music, and he was creating scales. He's creating chords which create scales, but he was using clusters of major and minor six. Therefore, the channeled person that was on the receiving end from the adepts in the Himalayas was saying he was creating the first audible example in the scale of the music of the spheres. So from here on, we're going to go into this in a little bit more deeper way. If you want to add something, or
yeah, no, I think that's so cool that he was making higher devas music using this golden ratio, you know. That's just so cool.
Exactly. So we're just going to have a look at scales in a general kind of way now that we've identified the 12, which is called the chromatic scale. From C, we've got 12 here until we get to the next C. Well, there's also what they call the diatonic scale. That's a 7-fold scale, whereas the chromatic scale is the 12 notes there. And this is, again, we were talking earlier about the 7 dimensions or the 7 rays and the 12 rays. We can see it's still the same distance, except you could work with 7 and you arrive there, or you could work with 12 up, and get there, and still arrive at the same place. So whether they're talking about the 7 or the 12 rays, or the 7 dimensions and the 12 or 13 dimensions, they're actually talking about the same amount of space, if you want to call it that.
Kind of like built in. 7 is like the underlying blueprint, kind of, and then everything else kind of comes out of it.
Yeah, exactly. So again, this is just for visual kind of impact on what we're talking about. Here's the diatonic scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and the chromatic scale, the 12 there. We add in what they call the sharps here, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, and so on. That's just a visual of it there, just to help people understand this. We're just going to we're not going to say much more about this, but this is the Indian scale. Now, it's known in the Indian scale that they have about 22 tones, sounds in one octave. So we're back here and we've got 12 tones in the Western scale between one octave. And we go to here and we got the microtone of Indian music. So of course they don't use all 22 in one tune, different ragas for different times of the day.
Yeah.
So what they do is in one particular raga, Sa, Gama there. So they use that one. So they're still only using, say, 7 or 8 tones within the octave, but they're not the ones you normally hear in Western music. Therefore, we call Indian music, exotic. It has an impact on our emotions, which we don't often feel when
because
you're
it has
listening.
new sounds almost like it's being created, but they're from the same again. But it's just kind of different sounds.
Yeah. For example, if you've got a violin or a cello, and you slide your finger up the fretboard or the fingerboard, you're hearing a whole slide. It's like that. So that is the sound current, that whole sound. Whereas on a guitar, you've got frets. So you go ding, 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 ding. You don't get the whole flow of the sound. So what the Indian music is doing there, instead of like the fretboards on a guitar, where you hit there, and there to create a chord or a tune, the sitar, for example, has more frets, or I think they just slide them a little bit. So the frets are in different places of that whole sound current between an octave. So they isolate different points to put their frets there. There's sounds we don't normally hear in Western music unless you're listening to the slide of the violin going, fingerboard going up and down.
Hmm. Yes, that's probably why I love Indian music. I listen to all the Indian mantras all the time. Whenever my energy vibration's kind of dropping, I put on a
Exactly.
mantra, it comes right back up. So I'm like, there we go. So it's great. Thank you for
So many
explaining
people,
like why it happens. I never knew why it happens. Now I can understand why it's happening. So
exactly. And here, this is a pentatonic scale. So the diatonic was 7, the
mhm,
chromatic was 12, the Indian is 22 tones in an octave. In Chinese music, they only use 5 tones in in an octave. Therefore, their music is, even though it's very subtle in a way, they build it around a pentatonic scale. And I've looked at the psychology of sounds to a certain degree. If we were to go back, a few hundred years in China, not way back,
mhm,
when China become very sort of, you couldn't break away. We see it in movies, you just can't break away from the expected. You kind of locked in an expectation, especially for women. So their music was, I would have to say, it wasn't very expressive. It's
mhm.
the wrong word. Um, yeah, there's something about it.
Be
And the more
contained, contained.
contained,
Yeah,
contained, it's a
the
great word.
people in that culture even are contained. When I talk to people from China, I'm like, don't you guys want to change things? They're like, it's not that bad. We all have food. I'm like, no, it's pretty bad. So, but yeah, I think the music is a way of kind of controlling people in a good or bad way, right? So you can
It-
spelling,
It's a,
lyrics, all that is very powerful. So if you want to
it's a
contain,
good way to put it. Yeah,
very
that's a great way to put it.
thank you. Yeah.
I'm not sure whether I want to, I think I'm just going to go back here. So we're just going to go back to here, this one. So in the Western world, where Pythagoras and the music theorists, they will say, they'll ask, well, where do these ratios come from? Why use those ratios? So in the Western world, the selection of 7 tones and 12 tones, or more the 7 tones of the diatonic scale. The reason they've only got 7 is that they breaking up these ratios here, and they're ratios of prime numbers. So prime numbers you can't divide. So there's 3, 7, 11,
Oh,
13,
um,
17. So they're called prime numbers. So in the Western world, what they've done is, or what they did was, they used a prime number. I think it was 13.
mhm,
It was 13. They started to break up, divide that into ratios.
mhm,
Whereas, for example, down here, when we're looking at the Indian microtones, more tones, they went to a higher prime number. So they jumped out to prime number 17, and then they created ratios based on a higher prime number, and they had more ratios to play with or to utilize. So
mhm.
this is called just intonation, JUST, intonation. Put that in Google search and you can read all about how scales are built on prime numbers and the ratios from prime numbers.
It's very cool.
So we're just going to go in here a little bit. Now we're getting more into sort of the artistic side of it, I hope.
Mhm.
Uh,
Silver
here
ray.
we have, yeah, so here we have the A1Z26.
Mhm,
So going back, this is like 30 years ago. I
mhm,
remember the channels saying that the arrival of the gold and silver ray. So I'm not sure whether people have heard or know of Brian Eno. He's an old guy now, but in the 70s, late mid to late 70s, somewhere around then, he developed, or he termed, a style of music that he was looking at and developing, which he called ambient music. And it was a music which basically you really didn't have any drum beats or anything. And it was music that was kind of, you'd put it on and you'd do other things. It was background music. It was music to meditate to. It
mhm,
was included the sounds of nature and so on. Even some of the Indian music was woven into it. Of course, nowadays the ambient music scene is huge. There's just so much out there. So interestingly enough, when we work out the alphanumerics for the silver ray, the background, ambient music, sound healing, stillness, regenerative, and zero state, sweetness, exquisite, doubled up regenerative, drone tones. There it is, drone tones, ambient music. Keyboardist, most of it was done on keyboards.
Mhm.
So again, we've linked the arrival of a new ray, the silver ray, around about the same time as Brian Eno was terming this new style of music, calling it ambient music. And we
Oh,
see how
silver,
closely,
the color of that kind of music.
yeah,
Goodness.
that's the kind of
Mhm.
flavor if you wanted to
And
use
the
color.
ear shows the Fibonacci sequence inside of it. Is the way our ear hearing also related to the Gaussian radio, like the proportions of, because I see it there in that, right? Like in the
Here's
ear.
our ear with the, I don't know whether you can see the little overlay of red lines there.
Looks
With the
like the
gold.
golden ratio in there, right? Like you kind of mapped it, the spiral.
Yeah, so there's our ear. You see this on Google search. There's just dozens of examples of it. So our ear, the shape, the overall shape of it, based on the golden ratio curve, but also some of the curvature that's going into
Mhm.
through there into the eardrum and so on. Golden ratio again. So imagine the impact then of scales and music chords and scales that we were talking about before, based on the major and minor sixths, and how more easily that those sound combinations will enter the ear and create a kind of a beauty or a more impactful embedding into that forever infinite golden ratio spiral, the oneness, the wholeness, the I am presence, etc., etc. So the shape of the ear is built around the golden ratio.
Very
This is a plane view. It's kind of like slicing the top a little bit of your head off. And this
cool.
is showing here that if we got two golden ratio spirals, one that way and one coming this way, that it forms the shape of the brain here, the brain cavities in the brain, and it centers in there at the pineal gland in the thalamus, which is kind of there as well. So in our brain itself, you can see side angle views of the brain shape as well, golden ratio. So plan view, side view, golden ratio, ears shaped on golden ratio.
Ear, like the whole body kind of has Fibonacci sequence, like or the golden ratio in it. Golden ratio.
It's the predominant geometry of our body, especially the curvature of women's bodies. Women have more golden ratio curves in their body than men do. Hence the famous saying, women are closer to the source than men. And it's true.
You heard it here first, folks, from Grayham. Just kidding. No, but I think, yeah, God definitely, when he created the universe, wanted it to be very beautiful, right? Like make the most beautiful animals, nature, women, babies, men, like everything is just so beautiful. Before they mess with it and do all these chemicals, most humans look so good, you know. Once they get all the
Yeah.
poison inside, then it's different.
Men's faces can certainly be predominantly golden ratio, and certainly a lot of the body shapes is golden ratio, finger, joint, arm, golden ratios. But often the torso and that of the frame of the male is more angular, so it's more based on
Or like square.
yeah, so it's more based on different geometries, not the golden ratio geometries, and that's for a
Okay,
specific reason.
very cool.
It's we better have a look at this one. So we've got just a few images here. We're not far off the end, really. We're just going through just a little bit here,
Okay.
how this is a curve called the Gaussian curve there. This is a mathematical curve of how energy kind of works. Be an easy way of saying that. And here's our octave again, from 1C to the second C, or 1D to the next D. And this curve goes up here. It's a natural curve, it's sort of a waveform.
Mhm.
Here, and it goes around. So where it peaks up here, this is the major fifth, the 5/3. We're
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
closest to the golden ratio in the modern scale on the piano or the keyboard.
Mhm.
And
We were
down
right
here, he's just
there,
got.
you said.
Sorry, sometimes I can't hear. Just it's my fault. There's cars driving past here.
Oh, no worries.
What was that?
I was just saying the major six is where the curve happens, like you were saying in the major six area, like in that chord, the original one, you showed us the graph, but that's where you
Yeah.
see.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and the -6, which is very close. The -6 will be this one
Mhm.
here. The exact golden ratio has got that little symbol circle with a line going through it.
Oh,
That's the symbol for the golden ratio. So that goes up the middle between the major and the minor
very
sixth. We'll see that in graphs as we go on here. So there's that curve one way and the curve the other way. So it's, it's not a flat surface. It's a spiraling. It's like a cone, like wrapping a string around a cone. So it's a,
yeah.
a, a waveform in that sense. So this is a better way of seeing it. How do we get to the golden ratio and the Fibonacci interval tones? So over here, we're just talking about here. So we've got the 3, 2. Remember, these are prime number fractions.
Mhm.
5, 3 for the major sixth. This is the fifth. Here we've got the -6. And we see here, this is the golden ratio symbol. That line going through the middle there is, we'll call that the golden ratio threshold. That's based
Mhm.
on the golden ratio there. When we look at the ratios or the fractions, here we've
Mhm.
got the 2, 1 for the octave, and then the first tone. If we've got our finger on C and we put our finger on G, which is the fifth, that's one tone, that's the other tone. We're that far off the exact golden ratio. When we
Mhm.
put our finger here, so we've got a one finger on C, another one there
Mhm.
on G sharp. That's the on A. That's the major fifth there. Then we're kind of that far away from the golden ratio. Again with this one, the minor, we're that far away, and the further out the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence goes with
Mhm.
these ratios, the closer and closer. And when we get out here at 144, which you'd end up, if you keep adding these together, you'd
Mhm.
end up at 144 out here. Well, then you've got almost exact golden ratio tones.
Mhm.
So that's just a visual of how that
The
kind of
symbol
works.
of pi is interesting. I never noticed that it's like an eye with an eye in it. So it's kind of like looks like an eye with an eye. So I am present, like the eye. That's interesting.
And remember, it's not pi, it's not pi, it's phi. The pi
Five.
geometry is different. That's, yeah, pi is basically a hexagon.
Mhm.
So, for example, the radius out from the center of the hexagon to the one of the points of the hexagon, the radius is the same length as the edge lengths, and
Mhm.
that is the pi ratio, pi.
High range.
Whereas this is the golden ratio. You know, it sounded like fi, but it's spelled phi.
Oh, okay.
So you have different, that's why, for example, the decagon, uh, the radius of the decagon from the center out to one of the points
Mhm.
is a golden ratio larger in size than the edge length, one of the 10 edge lengths of the
Mhm.
decagon. That is a phi ratio. That's a golden ratio dynamic between the radius and the edge length, different than the hexagon where they're the same. And that decagon is basically built by using one of these. You could get 10 that length
Mhm.
and put them around. You'd create a decagon, and
Mhm.
that length there is going to be the radius of the decagon.
Oh,
Or you could start there. Doesn't matter where you start, but whatever that length is, that
uh-huh.
could be the 10 edge lengths. That's got to be the radius. So
Oh,
decagon is a somatic flat surface pattern of the golden ratio spiral. That's how it flattens itself from the spiral down into 2D. We've got a
mhm.
decagon. That's why we use it in the astrology, because that decagon is the cross section of the DNA helix where
Mhm.
the Akashic records are stored.
Very cool. Yeah, I love
So,
cards. So they're so great. Let's see.
so that basically we're just repeating here again. So here's our scale, except we're going the other way.
Mhm.
So, and we'll get to how that works both ways in a moment. So here, for example, we've been talking about C and going through the scale, our 12 tones chromatic scale, and we get to the next C up here. And we were looking at it going this way. We were talking about major and minor sixths,
Mm-hmm.
Fibonacci numbers, but you could start at the higher C and go downwards a
Mm-hmm.
major and minor sixth. So in this sense, we've gone up this way,
Mm-hmm.
scale going up, rising in tone, or you could just as equally start this way and
Mm-hmm.
go downwards in tone from a higher C down to a lower C, and
Mm-hmm.
you got the minor and major six here, golden ratio right down through the center of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that means now, instead of having just three notes in our chord or our scale, going from the bottom one up to the two or up here, now we can go down and start here and go downwards. Now we've added two more notes. In music, these are generally called the major and minor third.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've expanded the number of tones that we've got access to, and we can run a chord or a progression of notes going upwards to higher tones based on the golden ratio or Fibonacci numbers, and we can come down the other way, or we can do it both at the same time. And this is what Scriabin was doing. I've done it myself, some of my own musical pieces.
That's so cool. Yeah, I remember you sent me one of the songs you've done, but yeah, I would love, if you have any links, I would love to put it so people can check out your music as well. Is any of it?
Sure, I got a Bandcamp page. On my website, there's a drop down, or along the top, you'll see the music of the spheres. And so open up that page, and I've got a lot of what I've got here on that page. And I've got links to Bandcamp. You can listen to some of the tunes, download them. I think it might cost you $1 or something.
Perfect.
Uh, that all that music I did there was done on a $5 keyboard. So keep that in mind as well.
So you should inspire people that want to make music that you did that, because I'm sure there's musicians watching us and want to learn how to do that, or they're already doing it. So,
Yeah. Uh, so really, this is just repeating here again how
okay.
that this is a harmonic formation of sound and music. This is done by a guy called Rick Merrick down here.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a free PDF
Mm-hmm.
all about music and all based on the golden ratio, or a lot of it. And so if you were to go to Google search, you would type in interference theory. That's what he calls his PDF, interference theory, and PDF after it. And you go to his PDF and you can download it. Won't cost anything.
Mm-hmm.
So he's seeing it he's putting it here a slightly different way. Here's these same ratios. This one, of course, is not in Western music, but it is in Indian music. Same with this one, uh, not in Western music, but it is in Indian music. And he's showing that as you go down the progression, if you were in Indian music, if you're hitting these tones as you're doing it, then you're creating a vortex. You're creating a current, a flow of sound, which is going into your ear, golden ratio. And that sound current, he calls it Fibonacci dampening well, a vortex basically. And so he's showing there that it takes your attention, your focus, your meditative practice down through a vortex, down through the phi spiral. And then, of course, that phi spiral is infinite. It's infinitely long. And going back to the very first couple of comments, we were talking about the longitudinal wave and the extension of the telescopic tent pole as a longitudinal wave where each extension is golden ratio and lengths, and it soon becomes instantaneous. That's in light. And here we see the same thing, but using sound now. And this is how we can use sound to bring our consciousness, our focus, and put that through the speed of light. So we can do it with light or color and sound.
Very cool.
So it's just a couple more here, I think, and then we've probably more or less covered it. So these are just basically repeats here. He calls it phi recursion, golden ratio recursive heterodyning. So bouncing down the phi spiral by hitting the tones, the fifth there, major sixth there, minor six, and then you go on to the ones that are not in Western scales, but the Indian ones, and he calls it, you're bouncing down here, like bouncing down like going on a slide, a spiraling slide, but you're sort of, your bum's hitting it as you're going down. So that's sort of what he's saying here. But it's sound current, a current of sound, which is taking you through into the superluminal or into the higher states of consciousness. This one was what we were saying before, whether we're going up from the bottom C to the major -6, the golden ratio is right there, sort of in the middle, or whether you're going downwards, and here you've got the different tones, what we call the major and minor thirds, going down if you're going down from the top. And by combining the two, the top and the bottom there, those tones, and playing with them up and down the scales and that, you've got more tones to play with, and you can create currents of sound going up, currents of sound going down. Exactly what Scriabin was doing.
So cool.
A bit of a visual. We're almost finished here. So this is called bilateral keyboard symmetry. This is what I've been doing on the piano for many decades. So the very same thing where some sounds are running down, some are running up. Not that this, this part of it is necessary to create the effect, the impact. I think there's a better image here.
Cool.
Yeah, so here's our keyboard. So if we're running downwards, we can use the gold ones down there that way, or we're running up, we use the blue ones. Sometimes they're the same sounds, but it's the way we use them in the flow of the sound going up and down. A few famous composers have done this. A Finnish composer, I can't pronounce his name, whenever it is there. It's got
it's
not my style.
Inujani Ratavara. Like
Sounds good. I've listened to his music, but I'm not a big fan. Some of his compositions are okay. He's not using the golden ratio. He's just using the bilateral symmetry up down the keyboard.
Yeah, the golden ratio really makes a difference, it seems, in everything. When like artists use it, everything, I see it. Like it just changes their painting, it changes their music, changes even, everything. Oh, that's so cute. Little girl playing piano.
Yeah. The golden ratio is the prime template or the prime thought, the initial act, whatever word you want to use. And then it all relates to what they call the 0 point for us here in this world, in this reality. The 0 point is what they call the Planck constant or the Planck length, which is where the smallest light photon, the smallest measurable torus shape, and then the next step or smaller, you go into and through into the superluminal. And experiments show that even the first few recognizable phenomena beyond the speed of light is the speed of light multiplied by the golden ratio. So that telescopic tent pole longitudinal wave extending through the speed of light at the Planck scale going through faster than light, you extend your pole or your length by the golden ratio, and that's where they've recorded measurable phenomena. So that's the physics side of it. I'm a big fan of that physics side of it based around the Planck constant, but this is more of an artistic uses of music rather than the actual sort of physics behind it. This is a snapshot of a YouTube, and I got the link there. So if anybody wants to take a screenshot of that. So what this is David Serrata, pretty tuned in kind of astrophysicist or physicist. So what he's done in the YouTube, you can hear it, you pop headphones on. So he goes on to show that the normal chromatic scale, so there's your 12 tones, he pushes them all down at the same time, all 12 tones, pushes them all down at the same time, which you'd never do in music, but he's going to show you something. So he pushes them all down at the same time, and there's a lot of sort of chaos as the waves bump into each other through time as you're listening to it. A lot of interactions, wave interference, they call it. And then he uses the Sol stereo scale there. Again, I'm not saying that right, probably. which is the famous healing tone.
Mm.
And so what he does there is he pushes down those same, or those he's tuned each of his keys on his keyboard to those exact frequencies of that scale there, those tones. And he does the same thing. He pushes them all down at the same time, all 9 of them. There's far less distortion than the chromatic 12-fold scale, as you'd expect. But still, the waves bump into each other while you're listening through it along the timeline, as you're listening to it over a period of time. There's a certain amount of interference between the tones of the solfeggio scale.
Mm.
So then the next is, and he gives the next example, and he says, well, I'm going to push down a bunch of tones. I think there's about 10 of them. And he's tuned each of his keys on his keyboard, as you can do on an electric keyboard. He's tuned each tone based on the golden ratio. So each tone is separated by the golden ratio. We were looking at before, the major and minor thirds are pretty close to it. So these tones now, there's 10 tones separated by the frequencies of the golden ratio. He pushes all of those 10 down together, and you can listen to it forever, and you'll never hear any wave interference. There's no distortion, no wave interference at all. So he's proving there that the golden ratio has zero crosstalk, zero wave interference. Those tones will go forever, and never will they sort of clash into each other. That's important, especially for people who are designing cables between your amplifier and your speaker. Nowadays, you can buy cables where the inner wiring is based on golden ratio, smaller wires, larger wires, but the diameters are based on the golden ratio. You can buy those cables, you can plug it in between your speaker and your amp, and out of your speaker, you don't hear any of that hum. We generally hear the hum, so there's a lot less hum.
Wow, this is a good tip. Yeah, I want to make everything golden ratio possible, right? Like put everything, put it all around the house, do as much as you can. I mean, it's already in all of nature, but yeah,
Yeah,
I like that. Hearing it better.
it's just some visuals. So not much depth. Can't say much more about it. Just that spiral in different forms in nature,
Yes.
water spirals, etc.
Of water even.
Yeah.
Fire
So,
even, right? Does fire also follow the golden ratio? Just kind of curious about that.
yeah, in a sense, that's right. Generally, when a spiral is initiated, or where a current or a flow or gravity or consciousness, when it's there, when it's initiated, then it wants to embed into the fractal of the universe. It wants to become whole. So it's looking for golden ratio. It's navigating towards it. We don't have to even focus on it. That's why when we're meditating, we slip into those brainwave states of alpha, theta, and delta. Well, those borderlines for those frequencies in our brain oscillating, that is Fibonacci numbers. So we meditate and we just slip into it. It's there. We almost can't stop
Naturally,
ourselves.
like in the background, kind of, you're saying, like it's kind of like something we can access through meditation and music, but it's like the blueprint of our existence is the golden ratio. The different tools
Exactly.
kind of go into it. Very cool.
Yeah, and whenever pure intent is the motivating force, we almost can't stop ourselves. Well, we couldn't stop ourselves really from embedding in that kind of matrix, or matrix is a dirty word, but in that fractal.
So it's like, yeah,
So
purity in a sense, keeping our hearts like in that good energy that just takes us into those spaces, you're saying.
exactly, you can get an app, locate it, put a bit on your brain, and watch in real time the graph of your heartbeat while you're meditating. It'll just log into golden ratio harmonics once you still yourself down and stop thinking.
Wow.
So might be the last image here. This is just to show again, we had the waveforms. If you're looking at it from the side, which is generally the case when people are drawing up harmonics, wavelengths and notes or tones, ratios and so on, they do it this way. But as we were saying before, An uninterrupted sound creates the same harmonics, but it's actually spherical harmonics. So though there to there going outwards like that is sort of going along here, but now we have a true representation of it. On the Earth, of course, where sacred sites were, the Great Pyramid there, we've got Angkor Wat on that point, we've got, you can't even read that one.
Oh yeah,
We've
what is
got
that one? Yakat Yum Antum Anatum, something like that. I can't
oh,
remember.
it's in Vanuatu, that's right.
Oh, okay.
Easter Island there, Machu Picchu there. So starting at the Great Pyramid, going around to sacred sites, they're out there on the points of a decagon.
Mhm. That's
The
interesting.
dolphin, sound of a dolphin. So holographic sound of dolphin. There it is again, the decagon there.
Huh?
So they're pulsing out sounds, holograms, and this is what it looks like in 2D. And of course, it creates a spherical wave
Mhm.
in a sense as well.
It says dolphin sings to the Gaia light grid. So they're singing to that grid, the dolphin, and they're sending this beautiful sound wave to it. I heard the
Yeah,
whales do
yeah.
it as well,
As
obviously.
I say, dolphins and whales are healing.
Yes. Very
Yeah,
cool. I
dolphins and
love
whales.
that. That's such a good slide too, for people to kind of be able to see that like it's in music, it's in nature, and it's also all around the earth, how the sites have been built for probably a
Exactly.
specific
That's
reason.
why the Earth exists. You know, that this is what they used to call the etheric body of the Earth.
Mm,
Nowadays, sort of you can understand it's actually the principle, it's the maths, it's the geometry. And once that geometry, well, that geometry is always there, but that geometry pre-exists. It exists before the Earth, which kind of coalesces around the sort of energetic matrix, the etheric level. Rudolf Steiner's formative ether. Even the shape of the dolphin, based on golden ratios there.
oh, that's so cool. I love that. And these are the sounds, the shapes created from different sounds
Yeah, somatics.
and
So different
matics.
sounds create different geometries on a flat surface. Remembering always that,
People give off sounds like silently. Do you feel like our peak, because the vibration of the aura, is that also a sound wave or is it more of a frequency wave or is that the same? I don't know.
oh, yeah, our auric field
Mhm.
around us. You know, like they say, a really pure person has a sweet aroma,
Mhm.
whereas
Mhm.
a really negative person often doesn't smell that great.
Mhm.
You know, that's like the scent of a rose, 5 petals of a rose, a pentagon, and 5 petals inside it. That creates a decagon that pop up inside. The aroma of the sweet aroma of the rose is directly related to the golden ratio geometry of the flower.
Oh, very cool.
So
Very,
that's just
yes,
music liquid architectures.
it's
And
amazing.
I think
Liquid
we've
art,
come to the end.
it's a cool word.
These were just here, but I don't think. Oh, well,
Mhm.
this is the last one here.
Okay, the
See if I get that.
instruments. Yeah.
Yeah, see if I can
Oh yeah, yeah. I
get it
think
down a bit.
I know technology.
So it's well known that the violin, and
Mhm.
that means the cello and the bass guitar, stand-up bass, um, the shape of them is based on the golden. Even the guitar, the shape of them is based on the golden ratio. That's why they sound so good. They spent, those people that created the violin, they spent a long time
Mm.
coming up with the best shape to create the best sound.
Mhm.
Uh,
Wow. And that
studios,
studio.
recording studio
Mhm.
based on the golden ratio.
Mhm. Probably
The,
concert halls, I'm assuming they've made on
hmm?
Golden Ratio. Probably they've made concert halls, right? Like based on Golden Ratio. Have they made any yet? Famous ones? Yeah.
Well, a lot of the domes in the past
Mhm.
would have that in mind when they're building those domes, for churches and in some of those,
Mhm.
Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah.
Some of those are based on that understanding. So you
Mhm.
go in there and you do your chanting, and the harmonics bouncing off the inner surface of the dome coming back to you sound like angels singing to you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh,
Cool.
Here is that cord. This is a cable. and inside the cable, the threads, the windings of the wires based on the golden ratio. Costs a lot of money. It's about 350 US dollars for a meter of it. So I think we've come to the end now, unless you're going to add
No, I think
something.
that's great. We covered color, we covered music, we covered the notes, we covered the golden ratio between them. You went into like the mathematics and the numbers of it. I liked how you covered the three different numbers and how they go with like the different things like astral projection and the psychic thing. That was also very cool. We can kind of exit out of this so we can be bigger as we kind of wrap up our conversation if you want, so they can kind of see us and that kind of stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure. Okay.
we just kind of X out of it, or I don't know how to do it. There we go. Yay, there you are, Graham. So good to see you. Your wisdom is so much. I feel like it always takes me a couple of times watching it for me to download it all and understand it. So I think people are gonna love it.
Oh, cool. It's an hour and a half, so not as long as the last ones.
Yeah, last time was
Hopefully,
2 hours. So we did good today. We powered through, and anybody's interested in getting a galactic chart, I'm going to put Graham's information below. His charts are amazing and open up so much about your destiny and your gifts. And so he can also send you the information on color stuff. I remember you sent me a magenta one that was very helpful. So thank you so much, Graham. So honored to have you. And thank you for getting up early in the morning to do this. Behind you looks so beautiful. I'm glad it's not snowing over there anymore.
some
So.
springs kicking in. When a person gets a chart done, I send them nearly all those images there. As
Mhm.
part of it. It's all embedded in, or a lot of it is in the post-ascension glossary, which
Yes,
you would have there.
exactly. That's
And
why I feel like that's why I learned a lot. After you sent me those, I would study them on my own for a couple of years, and I feel like that helped me prepare for us to be able to even have these conversations. So yeah, you send so many good things, and I'm excited to have our next conversation. If people want to know about the thing we mentioned last time, Altair, the star that's going to start lining up in November 5th, please watch our second video, and he goes into it very deeply. Thank you again, Graham.
right. Thanks so much. See
Thank
you
you.
next time.
See you soon.